We are on. Good evening, everybody. The Newton Planning. Can you hear me?
Recording in progress.
The Newton Planning Board would like to hold a public meeting on Tuesday, August 27th, 2024, beginning at 7 p.m. at the Newton Town Hall. First, I would like to salute the flag. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. So the first item on the agenda tonight is a continuation of Fresh Acres LLC of Chelmsford, Massachusetts request for a public hearing for a two-lot subdivision of their property at 34 Smith Corner Road. Newton, Kansas. Property is referenced as tax map 8, block 3, lot 9. And we have Mrs. White online remotely. Is that the only member we have online? I think so. Nobody from the public? Nobody from the public.
Jim, you want to tap that okay up there so it goes away the bar so we can see the people? Please. On the screen.
Yeah, your Zoom screen. Oh,
If
Jamie's
it's
going to take care of it. Thank you, Jamie. Thanks. Okay, so I was not in attendance last hearing, so.
We've accepted jurisdiction on this.
Yep.
Perfect. There was a couple items. Do you want to?
I would recommend that the applicant do a real quick overview as to what their application is and the couple of items that were brought up at the last meeting, how they have addressed that.
And the podium has moved.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you for having us here again. I was in continuation of what we had done last week or 2 weeks ago. So originally we talked about 4 different things on our previous meeting. So we addressed the concern you guys had. Number 1 was to correct the typo errors. We had 2 typo errors, which is the 3 lots instead of 2.
Yep.
And state also New Hampshire versus Massachusetts for the owner address. And the second one was to identify the septics of the existing lot, which is on the map. We did talk to the engineer, and they were able to do that successfully. And the third one, I believe, was the line of sight of the new driveway, which is, if you look, we had actually over what was requested, up to 250 feet. Because they went to the site and they, identified and they correct everything that needs to be corrected. And number 4 we had is taking care of the gate, which is, as we showed you in the picture, we took care of that, we put it in place, so there is no more driveway there. That's just in and out for barn, if it's ever been used or it's gonna be used, and there is nothing in the barn, which means there is no need for any cars to go in or out from that. And that's basically the 4 things we touched on last time, unless you guys have any questions or concern. Yeah, so thank you. So basically, we were here last time looking for variance from you guys and the ZBA for the new lot, because as I mentioned last time, we had too big of a land to have only 1 lot on it, where when we first bought it, it was a farm, but we couldn't do use of the farm because of various reasons that I don't want to go over now. However, we thought this will be the best use of an empty land, which is over 4.7 acres. Yeah, so, but given the location of the existing house, that what made things a little bit harder, because it's not right on the side where it gives us more space. It was built, over 200 years ago, which makes things a little bit tougher unless we take it down, that's not on the picture to do. And that's about it. Thank you.
Thank you.
So just from a pure land use standpoint, the existing lot is size-wise, except for the frontage, certainly large enough to be subdivided into 2 acres. I do think that the proposed configuration, given the dimensions, does make a lot of sense. Even with the reduced frontage, there's still adequate sightlines. Does it fully conform to your zoning? No, but that's why they got the relief from the zoning board, because it meets the spirit and intent of the variance request. So I think from a subdivision standpoint, which is what they're here from you guys, this is a fairly straightforward application. Kind of standard conditions would be the recommendation. But you will need to reopen the public hearing. I know there's,
So Jen, they need our approval to go to the ZBA to get
They
that.
need it to be a condition of the approval.
Right.
yep.
Yeah, we do have an abutter here, I don't know if he would like to. You good?
Yeah, you need to reopen the public hearing for that part, but.
So I have a question. So there's a permanent discontinue use of the entrance on Woodland Farm Road. That's part of it, right?
Well, it's to discontinue the entrance that's nearest that at the last meeting, there were people claiming that that was the main driveway. That's not, it's gated now.
It's gated, and he said it's only for use if they ever intend to have to put something in the bond, that they
Right.
just open it for that one
I
time.
can answer that question. So originally, when we first bought it, it was kind of halfway closed with rocks, but it was not like a closed, organized part, because it was like bushes and there was never landscape for over a year, so it was like bushes higher than me. You can't see where the entrance, where the exit. So originally, when we cleaned that, we made it looks like more of a driveway, or if we ever need the barn, we have an interest to the barn, because the driveway, it's in from the other side, front of the
I
house.
understand.
So, but now after a few, neighbors thought that was a driveway, we put the gate there, so there is no more cars going in or out from there.
I guess my question was, are we saying that that's use as that for a driveway is prohibited? Is that what we're
So-
saying?
It's not a driveway.
No, it's
simply
not a driveway, it's
Oh,
not
so
a
it never
driveway.
can be?
It would not be permitted to be a town driveway.
Okay,
But
right,
having
right.
an access way,
Gotcha, yeah.
It
So he could always go turn into a driveway if he.
he can't
got
turn it,
permits.
no, he can't turn it into a driveway without a driveway permit.
That's what I meant.
But having
Yeah.
access,
Yeah, I get it.
really
Okay.
be-
Well, it's not paved. It's
No, I understand that. I just wanted to make sure, I just wanted clarification, that's all.
yep, so it would be allowed to remain because it was pre-existing. However,
If he ever wanted a driveway, he pulls a permit, turns it into a driveway if he wanted
yes,
to. Okay.
it
Yes.
could remain
That's all I wanted to
an
establish.
access.
So,
yes.
So the locked gate sort of, again,
yep,
it
understood,
implies that
understood, yep,
as well.
thank you.
Bob, you got anything?
No, it looks like they corrected everything that we needed them to correct, so I think the only thing now is for us to send them on to the zoning board for their variance.
Right, so I'm gonna make a motion.
No, you need to open the public hearing again.
I think we have a bar right there.
I asked him, and he said he's all set.
Oh, okay. Oh, I missed it.
You should still open it, and then you can just close it a moment after, but.
So everybody's good? So with that being said, I'm gonna make a motion to approve that with a variance from the ZBA of the frontage, that the plan falls within the scope of the applicable zoning ordinance and subdivision regulations, and that justice would be served by approving the application. Proposed conditions: you need to obtain that variance from the ZBA for the frontage. You've already discontinued use of the entrance nearest Bootland Farm, and you're gonna have to supply a recordable Mylar when everything's all said and done, so that it shows it,
Understood.
the acreage appropriately, right? And, so the Mylars must have all necessary professional stamps, and then you gotta set the bounds, all right?
Okay.
I'll second that. This is Barbara.
Excuse me?
Can you call the roll?
Yep. Ms. White,
Aye.
Mr. Ryan,
Aye.
Mr. Marshall,
Aye.
Mr. Mr. Eddy,
Aye.
Mr. Moran.
Aye.
That's unanimous.
Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen.
You're all set. Next step is the ZBA.
Yep. I've already gone over that with him.
Yeah.
Should I come to your office Thursday, or you want this now? Up to you.
Oh, okay, that's your application for the ZBA?
Yeah.
Okay.
Here, give me that.
Okay,
Signed right here.
excellent.
And here is the
Yep,
eight of them, which is, we also,
Yep.
we also took care of the issue with the size letter.
yep. And the checks. Yep,
I've never actually watched.
yep.
ISGH.
Okay.
I've gotten plenty of screenshots and links sent to me.
Put me in, coach.
Okay. We need to get on with the meeting, so if you want to finish.
Yeah, I will.
Sorry, their ZBA application.
Okay. Are we ready? So next on the agenda is acceptance of the meeting minutes from the August 13th, 2024 meeting.
Motion to accept.
Second.
Bob made the motion, Jim seconded it.
Okay. Ms. White,
Aye.
Mr. Ryan,
Aye.
Mr. Marshall,
Aye.
Mr. Eddy.
Aye.
I apologize, while I was taking care of the applicant, did you appoint Mr. Gibbons to fill in for Mr. Papakristos?
Not yet.
Okay,
Should I do that?
so Mr. Moran,
Can I appoint Mr. Gibbons in
yes.
place of Mr.
In which case, Mr. Gibbons
Christ?
and Mr. Moran.
Aye, thank you. Next is approval of the NPREA Manifest for $92.41.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Who did the second?
Andrew.
Thank you. Ms. White,
Aye.
Mr. Ryan,
Aye.
Mr. Marshall,
Aye.
Mr. Eddy,
Aye.
Mr. Gibbons, and Mr. Moran.
Aye.
That's
Next,
unanimous.
the Aquifer Protection Ordinance Amendments discussion. I'm guessing Jen's gonna.
Gonna
Yeah,
talk
talk to
about
us.
some things, but those of you that are here have a few maps in front of you, and Barbara, I'm gonna project it in just a second.
Thank you.
So, yeah, I understand that the print is small. You don't need to be able to read it. It's really honestly the big colors that I need you to look at right now. So if you look at the first map, and Barbara, this is what I have showing on your screen, you will see Newton. You will see the pink area. That is the current mapped stratified drift aquifer for Newton. That is also exactly what your groundwater aquifer protection district boundary is. That is the best mapping that exists in this part of the state. It's from 1983, and that is the best we have. I'm sorry, 1988. This is the basis that many municipalities use for their aquifer protection district. You'll see, if you look at sort of the areas of Kingston, Southampton, Plastow, they also use the stratified drift aquifer as part of their zoning districts. If you flip to the next page, and Barbara, that's what I'm showing. These are the public water systems as defined by federal and state law. that exist in Newton and surrounding communities. They are the dots, and then some of the dots have circles around them. The circles around them are the wellhead protection areas. Wellhead protection areas are based off of a couple of things. Is it a bedrock well? Is it fractured bedrock? But also the amount of water being pumped dictates how big or how small that circle is. And a wellhead protection area is basically defined as the area that, if there were to be a contaminant, has the potential of getting into that public water supply well. Because Newton is entirely supplied by groundwater, whether it's on-site private wells or public water systems. You don't have any piped systems other than some of the small public water, community water systems like Sergeant Woods. And I know the type is really small, and I don't need you to be able to read it right now. I promise I'll give you bigger maps. All right, any questions on what that map is at this point? Because the third one gets really busy. That's why I'm showing it to you in steps. The third one, so the blue that you're seeing is either a lake or country pond, or it's the aquifer. That's the basis for your zoning district. The different shades just are the amount of, I'm gonna get the term wrong on this, the amount of infiltration you can get into the groundwater of gallons per thousand. How many thousand gallons per foot that you can get soaking into that soil? So it's basically a deeper groundwater well, or deeper aquifer. The wellhead protection areas are on top of it. The thing I want to point out is that the wellhead protection areas do not perfectly coincide with the groundwater or the stratified drift aquifer. The reason that becomes important is that currently your Aquifer Protection District and all of the requirements and all of the protections that it has only applies to areas where that blue is, where that stratified drift aquifer has been mapped, which is great. It's a great start of protecting drinking water. But those wellhead protection areas, those big circles, are the areas that, should there be a contaminant, have a reasonable chance of getting to that public water supply well, which is why increasingly the state and municipalities are moving towards the trend of having their groundwater protection district include both. The thing about the wellhead protection areas and the public water systems is that they do change over time. That can be because a new subdivision is built. That can also be because there is a municipal or a water system that connects to a neighboring one, and suddenly they don't need their own well. They don't need that wellhead protection area because their water is coming from someplace several miles away. So it is a little bit of a dynamic situation where you can add, and sometimes you can subtract to those wellhead protection areas. The way that when we draft new groundwater ordinances and we include the wellhead protection areas, we draft it in a way so that we are reflecting in real time when a development comes in or an application, what is the wellhead protection area situation at that moment in time. So you're trying to capture the best available. People following that? Yeah. We'll get into all of the parameters of things that we can do for protecting the groundwater, but the area we might cover can either remain perfectly the same as it currently is, that first map, or we can also add in the wellhead protection areas. The big thing with updating groundwater ordinances and your existing groundwater ordinance is it doesn't fit past problems. I can't fix existing contamination with this ordinance. The goal is to prevent future contamination. The thing I want you to pay attention to is where do you have most of your highest risk uses potentially in Newton that don't already exist? They're in that southern part of Newton or on your border with Plastow. Those are sort of the two areas of town, and some of that is zoned mixed use, village district. You could have a lot of different, and some of it is zoned commercial, some of it is zoned commercial industrial. There are many uses that are commercial industrial that can be very safely done in an aquifer to really minimize risk. So this is not meant to be a damper on any development of those commercial spaces and impact on tax base, but this could put more protection in that future development or as those uses change over time to help protect some fairly significant wells that are down there.
And that not only protects Newton, but overlaps into neighboring communities.
Correct. So neighboring communities' groundwater protection can protect Newton wells and groundwater, and vice versa. Plastow has done some fairly significant amendments to their zoning in recent years. Kingston has. I'm working with Southampton currently to bring everybody sort of up to the same level of protection. Kingston does not currently include wellhead protection areas in their aquifer district. That is something that we may be working with them in the next couple of years, but Plastow does. Southampton, I'm going to strongly encourage that they do, because the other thing is that Newton, Southampton, you're the headwaters to Amesbury's water supply. So water doesn't really care about the borders. So that's going to be one of the very big things to consider. And I will say this public water system map is as of August 2nd. So this is the best up-to-date DES data, which they're not always great about doing it that updated, but this is real-time things that have been drilled and are officially pumping. You will see a couple of dots on there that do not have wellhead protection areas. That is because of the type of public water system that it is. It's not serving the same population for more than 60 days out of the year. It's things like a gas station or a restaurant sometimes can be a well. It's a public water system, but it doesn't have that wellhead protection area because it's not as routine of a supply.
It's a non-transient community water supply
Yes.
or something.
But we do have wellhead protection areas for residential properties, so like Sergeant Woods. We also get them for schools, larger employers. The town hall doesn't trigger because it simply doesn't have the population to trigger it.
Jen, could I ask you a question?
Absolutely.
Okay. Do we have the ability to add something to here? Because I was wondering, the big circle that's down over by Plastow, does that include,
So this
where
one,
125 development is gonna have their new housing? Is that already included in that?
it is not, because that has not been built, nor has the public water system well been permitted by DES. Should they proceed in building that, then eventually the map would have to be updated. The proposal that I'm going to pitch to you would automatically bring that into the protection district once that goes online.
It's probably
Okay,
gonna
thank
be
you.
inclusive of the Sergeant Woods wellhead protection.
I do think just because of the size that it'll already fit in an existing wellhead protection area. It is very common for them to overlap, and if you sort of dive into this, you'll sort of see in this area, it looks like several of the circles are overlapping. That's because there are 3 wells in Sergeant Woods wellhead field, or I'm sorry, in well field, so they actually get 3 overlapping circles that are just offset a tiny bit. It's hard to tell with the small scale you guys have, but.
A lot of water.
But you'll see you have like Sweet Hill Farm, you've got Greenfield Estates, Valley Field Apartments over in Plastow that are also pulling water that kind of transcends the municipal boundaries.
I was gonna say, it looks like Meadowview is the one that has the least coverage on it.
It's based on withdrawal rates, so it's.
Predominantly, yes, it can be the type of substrate that they're drilling in. But you don't have a lot of gravel wells in Newton. You have a lot of fractured bedrock. They do exist.
I think it only makes sense that we include the well heads in it.
It's useful for me to just get a feel. I mean, you don't have to make a final decision tonight, but it's good for me to just get a feel. I will say one thing, all of the places that are covered that are not commercial industrial, people are gonna still have their own on-site wells. This also protects their wells as well. If you're not in the district, you have other things that do protect wells, but you get a more explicit protection from the Aquifer District. And this really has very little, most of the aquifer performance standards have very little impacts on individual residential wells or even residential development protections. It's really preventing those uses, or at least putting common sense best management practices on the uses that have the highest risk to potentially contaminate groundwater.
So you couldn't do like a gas station within, or you would have to have additional protections.
Yes, so gas stations are one of those uses that it can be a known contaminant source. It's a pretty high risk source, but it's not as high risk as it used to be. For those of you that have been around New England for a while, MTBE was kind of a big deal about 15 years ago. It was an additive in gas. It really can pollute drinking water. That's why we went to mandated double-walled gas tanks in 2014, I think was the last year that you could have a single-walled in New Hampshire. Those have all been removed. So some towns don't allow gas stations in aquifer protection districts because of that reason and other risks. Some do. So that's some of those choices we're gonna have to go through. Dry cleaning is prohibited in almost every groundwater district. But that's not the way most of those businesses operate anymore. They're actually just collection sites, whereas they're doing most of the cleaning at a more centralized place. So maybe having a dry cleaner is now okay, as long as they're doing off-site clean. So there's a lot of caveats that can go with some of that. We'll try to have some basic parameters. I'm not gonna go through all of that tonight because we have some time, but I also have a proposal for you guys that was given to me 2 days ago from the state, yesterday. They have just come out with a new groundwater model ordinance that I was gonna be basing your changes on. I've worked with a lot, but the updated one does include language, if you're interested in using it, that does help to better prevent PFAS contamination. PFAS is an emerging contaminant. It's basically from industrial processing. It's things like Teflon. It can be in firefighting foam, fabric manufacturers. They've put in some optional, I'll say, guardrails into this updated model to help give better guidance to evaluate when there is risk from PFAS. Or when, if someone is a fabric manufacturer, which you would allow currently under many of your zoning districts. Okay, how do you put in, when does it make sense to have more testing and when does it not? Because maybe they just use a little fabric in the chair they make, or they do a lot of upholstery. So it's kind of finding that balance, and it gives you a better guidance for evaluating it. It gives better evaluation for applicants and third-party review, which you would always have the ability to do. So if you're interested in that, I've had offers from some of the folks at DES to help explain some of the parameters of the new model, but if you guys don't want to do that, I would still be working with you. I just wouldn't be working with the state as directly. You'd get direct technical assistance from them.
I'd be interested in that.
Okay.
Isn't there like a history of them finding that around Country Pond and stuff?
PFAS is found in every municipality except some of the ones up north that have nothing. So it's already in Newton. This would not be to deal with the existing PFAS, it would be to prevent future.
Right.
Merrimack, Litchfield,
Yep.
St. Gobain is.
Oh, I just wanted to ask Ms. Robin. We have on the Bay Hill Road border is the Merrimack Town wells. Now, they're not shown on the map.
I will say this only has New Hampshire public water systems. We haven't pulled in
Okay.
Massachusetts.
I was just gonna ask whether or not that was gonna be added because.
I certainly can. The way the ordinance is currently written, it would only include New Hampshire. And that's because you guys are in New Hampshire. It's hard for you to control Massachusetts, but I'm happy to have that get thrown in.
Well, I would actually want to double check and make sure that Merrimack doesn't have a well on Newton's side of the border.
They do not. These
Oh,
are
okay.
these are all of the public water system wells. And if
Okay.
it was even if it's a Merrimack well, if it's in New Hampshire, it gets licensed by New Hampshire.
I think their wellheads are smaller too in Mass, their protection areas.
They might be. My recollection is there's just a tiny bit that comes into Newton. I think it's just that, that
I'm trying to
one
pull
little
it up
corner.
Right now, but it's, Mass Mapper does not work well on a phone.
I'm sorry. Actually, you know where it does come in? We do have it mapped on here. It's just not as obvious. This little spur right here,
Yeah.
that is the Merrimack wellhead protection area because it is defined in your existing district.
Oh,
So the well is not in Newton, but the wellhead protection area, just that little tiny bit, is. I can't remember the name of that brook, but it's very little.
okay. I'll mark up the map and send it to you. Where I know that the other Merrimack wells are over here.
And that may be, but if their wellhead protection area doesn't come into Newton, then
Okay. Okay, I just figured I would double check. I wouldn't
But-
want Merrimack getting upset with us for.
I think that no matter what you guys do, you're improving the situation. So I had shown folks this last time. I have made several notes in your aquifer district because we're gonna have to make some minor amendments to your definition section. Also to your establishment of zones. I was contemplating that since we're going through this effort, let's add all of the overlay districts, including your groundwater aquifer protection overlay. But we've got lots of notes in here. I haven't gone through and made all of the changes because I needed to ask you guys about using the new model, which has some cleaner language. It's not a lot different than the existing language other than the PFAS. So we'll go through that. We're still early in the zoning season, so.
All right. Sounds good.
Is there any incentive to going over to the state plan other than just simplifying things?
There are definitely some citations in your existing district that need to be improved, but there's also just some performance standards that would be cleaner language, it would be more defensible. There's also some definitions that should be improved, some process a little bit. It's not gonna, with exception of possibly adding those wellhead protection areas, it's not gonna be dramatically different, it's just going to be more functional and clear.
That way there, if there was any contamination, like you said, if we ended up in court or whatever,
Yeah.
with the clearer language and everything stipulated,
Yeah,
we
it's
would be
not-
standing on a better leg.
It wouldn't
Correct.
be grossly prohibitive of anything we're doing now.
Nope. I mean, the only thing is that if we expand the district, the things you currently prohibit will be prohibited in a larger area, and that,
What do you think the percentage, how much have we grown that area?
you mean if we added the wellhead protection area, like how, what?
Yes.
I don't know that offhand, but I can get you the calculation. It's, I don't know, a third?
30% larger.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I don't
Maybe.
think it's that much, just,
I mean, there is a fair bit of overlap. It's mainly that southern part of this
Yeah.
town.
but it doesn't, it generally adds additional protection to
Yes,
operations.
yes. It's not so much prohibitive, it's just putting conditions on those uses.
Yeah, it's more manageable, it's better for the town, better for the town down the road.
exactly.
I will say it's a lot cheaper to prevent it than to clean it up or
Absolutely.
treat it, so.
It's for our own protection anyway.
The number one or number two thing in all of your master plan stuff throughout history has been protect the water. And that means a lot of different things, but drinking water is certainly high on that list.
Yes, and we just restated that as one of our primary goals.
Hazmat gets called in, you just hand over your checkbook. You don't ask how much.
You might not want to say that to Plastow, that's sort of what they've been doing. Alright, well that's as much input as I need for this evening, unless there are questions. I'm gonna go forward with expanding and yes to having someone from DES, they'll probably join us via Zoom, it's someone I've worked with for a long time.
Person. I'm gonna request.
I will ask Pierce, he's
Does
better,
this-
he's
does-
better via Zoom, trust me.
Does this ever go out to the town for people to have a voice in?
It absolutely does. So we, at minimum, we have to do a public hearing, and then it goes to town vote. But what I've been doing a lot with aquifers and any water resource regulation is we'll have a public information session one
Okay,
night
yeah, yeah.
where it's not a hearing, it's just
Yeah.
putting out so people can come ask questions.
Yeah.
Depending on the feedback, we still have the opportunity to make amendments, not in like the public hearing kind of crunch. So doing a public information session really end part of November, very early December, that still gives you until that mid-January to do all the public hearings. Maybe we get no questions and everybody's happy with it. That's typically not the course. Usually we have some people that come with questions and sometimes concerns, sometimes not. When I've had that happen, I've had public information session, we hear what people say, then we come back and have sort of a Q&A of like, all right, here are the answers to those questions or concerns. I can start that up front as well. Like, how does this change? Will it affect my business? Will it affect what I want to do with my property? If so, how? Things like doing a hydrogeologic study, which is not something you guys currently require, but is a good thing to have be a requirement. Spelling out what those general parameters can be, and for simple projects, it can be something very simple. For more complex projects, it can be a lot more in-depth and complex and costly. I've got some examples that I can forward to you guys from another town that range simple to very complex, so you can sort of see what they look like. I know you've seen them with some recent projects, but just to get a feel of what that range can look like.
Does livestock in those areas, does that affect?
I'm sorry, does what?
Livestock?
There are some best practices for agriculture that can be put in place and should be. It's mainly manure management.
Yeah, we put it in place. They were required to have a manure management plan on the property at, was it Whittier? By the tree farm?
Yes.
That was like 2 years ago.
I mean, it's a pretty standard, even if it's not in a groundwater district, if it's anywhere near water resources. So yes, but it's not something that's unheard of or uncommon or I'll say really severe. Put your manure on a concrete pad so it has a chance to dry out, and so it's not then leaking into the groundwater.
Okay.
Alrighty.
So we're a yes, yes, and yes.
I have my marching orders, I believe.
And do we want to talk about the Invest New Hampshire Housing Grant?
I do.
So, just to recap, by expanding or including, I should say, the wellhead protection areas, you're basically matching the surrounding communities, with the exception of Kingston.
Yes, you are moving in the direction that towns that are dealing with groundwater are moving.
Right.
You will not be unique, you will not be special.
Really?
Sorry.
I have a question. Dennis, do you and Jim Ryan have your microphones on? Because I can hardly hear anything you're saying.
Mine is on, but I do notice I'm not getting any. Oh no, I'm on. Maybe you can turn me up?
Is that better? I'm on.
Make sure you're not muted.
I'm not muted.
No.
Sounds like that's the best you're getting. Jamie.
Sorry, Barbara. Is that any better? My low battery light is on.
Try that one.
Or maybe it's not.
Thanks.
that better?
How about now?
Yes, thank you.
All right, so the Housing Opportunity Grant, I have not had a chance to finish up sort of the tasks, but the four main items that we had discussed at was it the last meeting? That would be, the goals would be to bring Newton into compliance with the workforce housing law. That would be by doing one of the tasks, an inclusionary housing ordinance. That would really be the focus this time next year, because of when, if we get the grants, the dollars wouldn't be available until really December 1st, which is too late for that kind of ordinance. We might be able to do a few small ordinances that are definitions, maybe a small tweak to the accessory dwelling unit ordinance. But that would be the limit for March 2025.
Wellhead protection aquifer does not need a warrant article.
No, it does.
Oh, it does, okay.
It does. So that's the big ordinance we're gonna work on for this year. We already have the grants and we're good on that one. So this is for housing. So housing, the grant, if we're successful, it's due on September 30th. We wouldn't get the award until at least mid-November. So we realistically of this year, so we wouldn't really be able to start until December 1, 2024, which doesn't give a lot of time for doing significant zoning changes. A definition, a small tweak, that's very doable. That's sort of going to be the first task. Doing the inclusionary housing ordinance is going to require probably starting work in late spring of 2025, because it's a big ordinance to have discussion about. It's going to take more thought. I'm going to need a subcommittee. I know you guys don't really always like subcommittees, but I'm going to make you do it. We'll look at other towns' inclusionary housing. We'll reiterate some of the findings of the housing needs that was done as part of the master plan chapter and the survey. We can also be working on in the spring modifications to subdivision and site plan regulations, because those do not need to go to town meeting. And then really next fall, having the public information sessions and outreach related to housing opportunities, whether it's inclusionary housing or other sizable, potentially, zoning districts. I do think that one small change that we can do, not for March 2025, but a consideration for the following year, is really looking to see where you allow duplexes in town.
I agree.
And if there are opportunities to expand that as a permitted use.
Yeah.
Doesn't have to be everywhere, that we can put parameters, but that seems
That's low-hanging fruit.
it's pretty low hanging, and it's not overly complex.
No, and it's not really disruptive either.
Typically no, but some people want no change ever in a community. Some people are, build the high rises. So we're gonna try and get that more Newton sweet spot based on the information we have, what we've heard, your infrastructure, not bringing in compromise to natural resources. So we're gonna try to thread that needle, is basically. So the inclusionary housing is the really big one. Smaller modifications for like the duplexes, the ADUs, frontage maybe could be on the table. Streamlining some of your procedural processes. There are a few things in your zoning that I think could be cleaner administratively and procedurally. Either just language or process-wise that we can make those modifications to. It's just kind of a nice opportunity for cleanup. And then there's a couple of site plan and subdivision regulations to talk about. One of the big ones that I do want to discuss is when you have small-scale multifamily. You guys allow small-scale multifamily in your village districts already. The ability to use the International Residential Code for buildings, it's a fire safety code aspect. For those smaller developments, it can reduce the cost a fair bit without compromising safety.
Is that like OCA?
Instead of using International Building Code, which is the standard and what you currently cite. It's a very subtle change, and most people honestly won't understand it, but that's what it does. And for those smaller developers or the single property owner, it can make a big difference. So
A lot of other communities are picking up on that too. from what I understand.
It specifically is starting to be talked about more and more as a
Yeah.
simple change to make that doesn't really alter what you already allow in the community, but it can reduce the cost, which sometimes can make or break a project.
Yep.
Would it be possible to get a bulleted short list with not a lot of detail of like your recommended?
I am going to include in the actual grant, like, we might be doing this, 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 and this. I'm gonna write it so it says, we might do one of many things so that it is a little bit more concise, but also not tying your hands as to, you must do this, 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 and this.
Yeah, I think it would be in the interest of time, knowing that we're trying to do some of the low-hanging fruit for March, we could all at least get on the same page if it's the administration change of coming in front of us for an accessory dwelling unit or allowing detached accessory dwelling units, or I agree, the duplexes are harder, it's a larger discussion point.
Typically is. So I'll have the full scope for you guys for the September meeting. It should be a fairly straightforward process. I'll submit the application. I'll need Dennis's signature, but it's gonna be the same process that we've gone through. The parameters of the grant are the same. You guys get the grant, Jim bills us. It covers through September 2026, so. And since I'm already here, it makes it fairly easy and painless, I think.
Okay. Is there anything else?
There is not, for me.
Barbara, do you have anything?
I have a question, since I wasn't hearing a lot of what you guys were saying. With the Aquifer Protection Ordinance Amendments, did we decide that we wanted Jen to add the new DES language into the ordinance?
We are going to move forward. Can you hear me? Sorry.
Barbara, can you hear me? Barbara?
Yes, what?
Can you hear me? It's Jen.
My answer is yes. Okay,
Okay.
thank you.
So we are gonna incorporate the new DES language for at least discussion purposes, and there was consensus to at least move forward with that. Doesn't mean that you're obligated to accept all of it or any of it.
Okay, all right, thank you.
And that is it? Jim has one item, maybe.
I was just going to inform the board at the next meeting, I may come in with a new fee schedule, simply because the Lawrence Eagle Tribune is that much higher than the Carriage Town was. It's now running roughly $188 per ad that we're putting in, when the ads used to be, an expensive ad used to be $120. So I'm going to take some time between now and our next meeting, which is 4 weeks out, and go through the fee schedule, because I just realized that the application that was submitted tonight, the ZBA escrow amount that was given is not going to cover that application.
I thought we could get away from
Yeah, I thought we could.
I was gonna say, didn't the state do away with having a file in the paper?
Oh.
For planning board, yes. For zoning board, no.
And it's only the planning board ones, like if Ms. Rowden comes in with a new chapter for the subdivision regulations, the planning board doesn't have to do a newspaper notice. However, anything that requires an application and a public hearing still requires newspaper notifications.
But that cost can still be charged to the applicants.
So
Right,
it
that-
doesn't require the public hearing, then, like some of the things that we've been having.
Like the zoning ordinance changes or site plan subdivision changes that do require a public hearing,
Right.
that can just be noticed on your website.
Right. And I've been doing that.
Right.
However, like the gentleman that were here tonight, they're paying for a $188 ad to be in front of the planning board, they're going to be hit with another $188 ad to be in front of the when they come in front of the ZBA. That's the only, there's nothing out there that is less expensive. I can go a lot higher, but
I will say, just because it ties in with what we were just discussing with process,
Lowering costs, yeah.
there are some, especially like the single property owner, it's the only time they'll ever be before you, accessory dwellings, possibly home-based businesses. If you can have the criteria very laid out, and could be the same criteria, but they don't necessarily have to come to you, you just save somebody time and money. Now, it's $180. That's not gonna make or break somebody's accessory dwelling, but it can start to add up, especially the time aspect.
But it also saves gym time too.
Yep.
And that's one of those things that it could be the administrative assistant that could sign off on home-based businesses, especially non-retail ones. They're necessary because you have the Secretary of State involved, insurance companies and banks that don't want, but site plans, yes. And that's something that the board should want to consider. I just noticed that, you know, a $250 deposit into the NPREA account, 188 is, you know, you basically strike that off the top as going to pay for an ad. If there's anything that has to be recorded, you don't have much left, especially when you throw in abutter notices. So I will be working on that in the next few weeks.
Okay.
There's one thing I wanted to say. September 15th is the 275 celebration parade. We are hoping that the planning board members would participate in that parade. If we can get you on a float, awesome. If not, you're marching 1.4 miles. But you can take your bicycle. We don't care.
I've heard there's some cool cars amongst the planning board members.
Yeah, because
Our own classic car?
Yeah, I can think of one planning board member whose house would probably be able to transport the entire planning board.
There you go.
yeah, people want to see who people are and probably carry a banner and, you know. Anyway, just putting it out there.
Yep.
Put it in your schedule. Pray for rain.
I think I might be busy. I'm not sure with what.
Is that sock draw time again?
Anything else?
There's a note at the bottom of your sheet.
Oh, which one?
Yours?
Page 2. Reminding people that there's no meeting on,
You indirectly mentioned that the next meeting was 4 weeks out.
So the
Oh, okay.
24th
Yeah.
of September.
No, we skip a meeting? Is that what I think?
The calendar, though, on the website, just so you know,
yeah.
incorrect. The calendar on the Newton Planning Board website
Yes.
is incorrect.
It lists a September 10th.
It says October.
Oh, okay.
Are you pulling it up, Jen?
Yep.
It's on the, like, 3/4 of the way down on the left-hand side.
Yes. So right here, Jim. It says the 10/10/24 meeting.
Oh, okay,
So it
yes.
just needs to be.
I will fix that.
But it says September on the left-hand side, so I don't think anybody else, probably other than myself, has got that. But, yeah.
And then, no, that's the select board meeting, will be November 5th. The election. That's the first Tuesday.
Okay. That's all I have. Anything else?
So no meeting next month, the first Tuesday.
No meeting on the 10th.
Yep.
Remind people that that's the primary day and the polls will be opened at the fire station.
That's perfect for my schedule. ZBA. Thank you. 7:55.